Please check your mute button. Great, I think we're ready to get started. This is Kay Kennedy at the Kentucky Department of Education, and this afternoon's webinar is for those schools that are participating in EANS 2. This afternoon we're going to look at how you need to amend your budget to track the 6% administrative fee that will be on all procurement transactions. We will walk through that specific example that you have a handout. I'll be showing that live in our test GMAP system, so you can follow along as we go through that. Secondly, we'll be discussing how to submit an EANS 2 procurement request form and what steps that involves now that the Ohio Valley Education Co-op will be the administrator of that part of the program, as well as the staffing part that they did for us in EANS 1. The third handout that you should have received is an actual copy of the KDE EANS 2 procurement request form. And that form will be posted to the KDE website. Our data manager is out of the office today. We'll get that up just as soon as possible, but the one that you have through the invitation to this meeting is accurate and is the most up-to-date copy. If you have questions as we go through the presentation, please feel free to write those in the chat. You can access the chat with the button across the top there that looks like a quotation mark in fiction or comics or something like that. So the little bubble with the writing in it, so you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And if we have time at the end, we could possibly take questions verbally, but that's a little bit harder to manage with this number of people. So Elise Crisp from our staff is going to monitor the chat box and bring those up as we need to. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you should be seeing the GMAP application system.
I'll just tell you after it starts.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Hey, Kay, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is, but if everybody could check and turn their mics off, please. Thank you.
Yeah, if you could put yourself on mute, that would be helpful. Okay, notice that we are in the test site here. I'm like Barney Fife with a bullet in his pocket. I can't really hurt anything in this site, so that's a good thing, but I will be able to demonstrate this example that we provided to you. So go ahead and get started. The first step, of course, in GMAP is to get signed in, and I've borrowed one of our participants so that we can have actual data to look at. And as you see here, this is a familiar screen that talks about all of the GMAP applications that we have at KDE. So the first step is to select the funding application that you want to look at. Make sure that you select the correct year, 2022, and in the entitlement funding application, there's an EANS 1, there may be an EANS 1 button in a few weeks if it's not already there, but definitely the one we want to look at is Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools 2, the EANS 2 program. So if you select that application, that will take you to the Sections tab. The Sections tab shows you all of the options that are available to you. And don't forget this little button over here on the right. anytime you want to sort of, take a glance of where you are in the process, you can select various items to print, and sometimes it's helpful. Probably if you're old like me and used to paper copies, it sometimes is a lot easier to track on paper than it is to scroll through screens, or if you don't have the luxury of having multiple screens, sometimes a paper copy can be helpful as well. Okay, now if you will turn in your handout, we're on the EANS 2 budget amendment process, locating your map, your budget in GMAP, and if you select budget, now we're to the point of actually selecting the budget category, just down here. And you will see good information, the total allocation, existing budget in categories that is not eligible for the indirect cost administrative fee, which means this is the staffing allocation. So the total available in your budget for procurements, including indirect cost, is $4 million. We automatically compute for you the administrative fee and show you the available balance, this number right here, the available balance for your procurements. So the indirect cost in this particular budget, which is a little over $5 million, the indirect cost is $230,323.39. And again, if you scroll on through the screen here, we see two categories, which is procurement and staffing. Again, the breakout is reflected here, and the total showing $5 million is what was allocated to this particular school. Now what we have to do, and I'm on step 3 of your handout, select modify for procurement. And again, the screen recaps where we are, but all you see at this point are the budget categories that you have already entered into for EANS 2. The purpose of this exercise today is to show you how to add in a category for the administrative cost so that you can manage that throughout the life of the EANS 2 program as you make your procurements and need to track that 6% fee. We'll show you how to do that. Now on to step 4. We're going to add, with this button here, click on Add Budget Detail, and we will get a screen that allows us to select any of the object codes that you want to add. This is not unlike what Elise walked through in the last webinar for your variety of eligible procurements, but the one that we want to track with this edition is the administrative cost. And this is the school that we're using. And to capture that, the max indirect cost amount should be entered here as a budget line item, one amount. And I'm going to put that in here as $230,000, $323.39. That shows this line item has a budget detail of that amount. Now, at this point, we don't have a lot of information other than this is administrative cost. I would suggest that at this point, you also add in some narrative about what this particular item represents. So again, as you see fit can edit here, you might want to include the date that you added. Something like that. Okay. And as you may notice on your handout as well as on the screen, now that we've got this item in here, the remaining amount is not zero anymore. At this point, our budget is out of balance. We have created a line item to track the administrative costs, but where's that going to come from so that we can keep our budget in balance? So to get started, complete this update. To get started, and again, as with most things, there are multiple ways to skin this cat. We're going to show you one example today with this particular school, how you can adjust other items in your budget to make up for this so that you can manage throughout the life of the program how this $230,000 administrative fee gets allocated and get used up as you do the various procurements. So now if you go back to, now we're back to item 6 on your handout. You have the newly requested assistance. The administrative cost is actually a budget line item. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page so that you can see even on this, we notice that remaining is a negative balance. GMAP, as you may remember from earlier work, won't let you off the hook with a negative balance here or any other kind of balance other than zero. So we're going to do what we need to do here to get this taken care of. After, if I'm a school, I've thoroughly examined all of my budget categories. In this particular case, I've selected 2 things that we can do to get our budget back in balance. So now over to item 7. And again, that's a reminder that you could print your budget if you wanted to, or you can actually go to the budget overview screen. Let me show you that before we go on. Just return back to our funding page. And if I look at the budget summary, oops, check that again. The budget summary. No, excuse me. I want to look at the budget overview. My bad. Budget overview. Now you can see all the categories that we have in this budget, the administrative cost that we just added in, and the fact now that it puts us out of balance. So this is kind of where we are. Now looking down through the various budget categories, you may identify some items that would steer you to places that you may have thought of were less of a priority for your school than some others. And by selecting various budget items that you've already described, you can make adjustments to now bring this budget back into balance. So we will go to back to the sections page and we'll click on our budget. Get back into modify. And in this particular school, if you'll notice on this blue bar here, we've got 101 budget line items. So again, the length of your budget obviously depends upon the size of your allocation, and your items can be tracked either individually or you can have. We've always suggested that you put sort of one item, one category, and make that easy to track. In this particular case, I happen to know that, and again, I'm over now on number 9. I know that I can go to page 6 in this particular budget. And I see several line items here in my technology area. But this particular item is a portable classroom audio system to amplify voice due to social distancing. I think I'm just going to kind of put that one on hold and say, maybe we really don't need this. It's not a high priority at this time. if another round of funding is made available, we'll do maybe take care of that then. So I'm just going to make the quick step of deleting this particular item, and I don't need that anymore. So if I click the delete button now, if you scroll down and look at the remaining budget, notice that it has been improved by that $142,500 number. Now I'm out of balance only by $87,000. So just deleting that one item, now I can account for $142,000 worth of that administrative cost. Moving on now to number 10, my budget's still out of balance, and I'm going to continue to adjust a category until the remaining amount to this amount down here in the remaining category is 0. So I happen to notice in my budget that I've got a category for transportation that I think maybe I can make some adjustments on. So I'm going to click to page 10. Because I happen to know where this is. And if I scroll down through here, see if I can find this. Under, this is about in the middle of the page here. Let me scroll it up a little bit. Okay. So here's an item for $225,000 that involves the leasing of buses. And I've indicated here that I might get 3 buses that are the small 14-passenger buses. I might get one 72-passenger bus. I think I can make some adjustments here. So if I realize that I want to get rid of that budget shortfall that was some $87,000, I can actually change, since this is a one unit item, this $225,000. If I edit this now, I can actually make my balance pretty easily. So I'm going to edit this category by clicking on the edit pencil. And I'm going to make a note over here that this adjustment on 030822 is to lower the number of bus leases to cover okay. And since I've already done the math calculation on this, we know that the amount here should be $137,175.81. And if I look at my bus lease now, showing $137,175.81, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so that you can see. Must have made a mistake on my. I can't quite read that number. It must be. Excuse me, I need to correct this number.
Subtract 80 cents is what I saw. I think that's right. Or add 80 cents. Maybe it was add 80 cents.
Yeah, I think it's 176.61 is what I think this number should be here.
Yeah.
So I will fix it. Okay, and do that update. And now that we've got the update in for the correct amount, you see the remaining balance is 0. So you've also witnessed how how the tool is available to help you with the out of balance. When I went down to check to make sure it was 0, there was that 81 cents hanging out, and I'm like, oh, I must have typed in the wrong number. Let me check that. So I was able to make that correction. So now I have, if you'll notice on page 1, I've got my administrative indirect cost in here accounted for, and I did that by adjusting amounts in two categories. One, I decided I didn't even need to worry about this time, and the other was I actually modified an amount. Now my balance remaining is 0, and I have made the adjustments to bring that into balance. So at this time, I'm going to return to the sections list. And if I look at the budget overview now, you can see that this new category is in the budget. I can track it, and I've got 0 remaining. Everything in my allocation is now accounted for. You have a lot of flexibility on how you can track this number. We have advised, or we will advise you to make a category for that administrative cost so that you can see exactly the amount that you have left to procure. In this case, the $3,838,723.19. This balance will go towards the administrative fee in each procurement that you make. It's not going to be charged all at once. As you go, as you make procurements, they will need to come off of this balance. Elise, are you getting any questions?
I have one question from Monica, but I wanted to point out something to you, Kay, just as a reminder. Could you go back to sections, please?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the application status on this one, it says KDE EANS consultant return not approved. Now, once Debbie goes in and makes her changes that she needs to make, she'll have to hit that revision completed so it comes back to our office for approval. Okay, and Kay, that was one step I forgot when we went over the notes, but just wanted to remind people, because there've been a lot of emails and questions about how do I get it to open back up. Now, once you hit revision completed, so don't do it until you're completely finished and ready for us to look at something. Once you hit revision completed, it'll stay what I call locked for you on your side until I or Bethany or Desiree have a chance to review the changes, send the approval, or make comments in that KDE consultant checklist. So when in doubt, if you think, okay, I want to come back and add some things tomorrow, don't change your status until you're ready for us to look at it. Okay, so I've got one question, Kay. Will this give us the opportunity to add new items to the budget while deleting or reducing others as long as it is balanced? If so, what is the review approval time frame expected for new budgets? I can take that question if you want to, Kay, or
Sure.
I'll let you do it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Or because we haven't really discussed this, and David Melante's on the call too. Your budget has been approved for the things that you put on it. We have not planned for adding things and having a new approval process go through. I think for me, it would really depend on a conversation with you or your consultant, and what does that involve exactly. We're just really constrained by time to start adding in new steps. Katie, you want to add on to that? You have a different viewpoint from mine.
So we want to help you spend down your allocation as much as possible. And I would say, especially right here as we're getting started, the fewer additions of categories that you can make to your budget, the better. Obviously, we're making one change to add in the category for administrative cost. And if you start adding in other categories at this point, we're just concerned that it would be too confusing, or it might lead us down a path that will hold us up more than we want you to be held up. So if we could take care of maybe this part first and get everybody's budget in alignment with what you've got, it's okay to take things out. It's okay to decrease amounts. But if you start switching items in and out at this point, I'm just very concerned it would be too confusing. At some point down the road, let's have that individual conversation that Elise mentioned, so that we don't have something in your budget that we can't support down the road. So let's kind of, the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? Well, let's do it one bite at a time. And so let's take this first bite that we're sort of talking about today, getting that administrative cost in a place where we can track it, and then move to other areas that you may want to switch, just like we've done with EANS 1. I know some of you have, changed your mind as you got into the program, and we want to reallocate this or reallocate that, and we are dedicated to working with you on that. But let's give ourselves a chance to get this part under control, and then we'll work with you to make sure you get your allocation spent in a way that's good for your school.
Okay, thanks, Kay. Second question. This is an unrelated question to this particular webinar. Actually, I don't think it is, Rodney. But it does relate to EANS 2. Who could I talk to about mobile classroom units and securing those through this money? It is in our original budget. So, Kay, you want to take that one away, or you want to wait until you get to the form and discuss?
Yeah. At this point, I just want to assure everybody that, we've got Obec on board, who will have a little more flexibility in making procurements all up and down the line with things that are very simple, like ordering more custodial supplies or something like that, to what we think is a pretty complex operation of leasing mobile classrooms. And I say that it's complicated because there are local zoning and planning officials that need to be involved in that conversation. There need to be inspections done of any new structures. I mean, it's just a much more complex process. And I think we feel like we would be remiss if we did not help you understand all along the way, as much as we can, who needs to be involved, why they need to be involved. And it's not really just as simple as somebody drives up a mobile classroom and drops it on your parking lot. It's a much more complex, but we do think there are obviously vendors in this market space, because you see mobile classrooms all over Kentucky, in both public and non-public schools. So the availability may or may not be there, depending upon what other schools have done, during the pandemic. I don't know what the market is right now, but we were able to secure one for a school in EANS 1, and it took a really long time to get not only the procurement done, but also the inspections at the local level with zoning and planning folks. So we're here to help, and we don't have any aversion to that type of procurement, but let me just warn you, it will take a little bit of time.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with either one of these entities, but I have a question. Can we use Bowman Paper or GFS to avoid administrative fees? They are approved vendors.
No, all of the transactions will go through Obec and are subject to the administrative fee. Now, Obec has the ability to purchase not only off of state government contracts, but they are also establishing partnerships with a couple of other co-ops around the state who may have more regionally situated companies that can service you more rapidly than perhaps we've been able to in the past. But the indirect costs, which our vendor, our partner, Obec, is incurring with the addition of staff and just the overhead costs associated with the program over the next 3 years, has to be covered, by this amount. And as I explained earlier, I do apologize that we did not put ourselves in a position to get this off at the top like we would normally do that. So you see it, it's more visible than sometimes it might be. So again, I apologize for that, but we do have to pay administrative costs for people doing this work of procurement.
Okay, when will we have access to edit our budget? Do we have access to do that now? And then Neil below has a question about, he's in there and he can't see the sections thing. Everybody's budget should be in that either KDE approved. Kay's got the screen up right now. Your application status, when you go to sections, you go first to funding application, then to sections. Then when you get to sections above, it'll say application status. It's either consultant return not approved or approved. Don't freak out if it says not approved. We did that because we had been going through and looking at some of the requests prior to knowing that Obec was coming on. So right now, truly, none of the budgets are approved because we've got to account for the 6% indirect cost Kay's discussing. But that's what you need to be seeing. Now, if you don't see either KDE EANS consultant return not approved or KDE EANS consultant approved, then reach out to elise.chris@education.ky.gov and I'll see if I can't help you after this webinar or sometime this week as fast as I can. Tom, how do we make changes to staffing like adjustment to salaries? Tom, you do that the same way you would with what Kay's been describing here. It's just that you would go into the modify for your staffing instead of the modify for your procurement. Kay, you want to see Kay showing you the page right there, Tom. So you see action.
Here's modify procurement, and right under here is modified newly requested assistance for staffing. So you would click on that. Up comes your staffing requests, and obviously if you want to delete something you can do that, or if you want to make an edit in an amount, or maybe, you know, I can't express enough how important it is to put something in your narrative descriptions as you work through this, because 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 years down the road, it's going to be hard to remember why you made a change. So whatever notes you want to give yourself in the narrative description, we're going to ask when you make a procurement that you add the request number in the narrative description so that we can very easily go back and tie what your procurement request says with what's in your budget. And we hope you can help us out with that for sure. But other notes that you want to make to yourself, I think, would be very, very important. So now I'll go back to the sections.
Okay. Vince is asking about quotes coming in for some ed tech higher than expected in what they budgeted in EANS 2. And if we're unable to reallocate from another EANS 2 line item, especially given the admin fee, may we make an adjustment to our EANS 1 budget to get the excess not available in EANS 2? So Vince, that would just really depend on how much you have left in your EANS 1 budget. You should have a copy of that. Anything in white, you are allowed to shuffle those funds, move them around as need be. If you don't have that line for whatever that ed tech is that you're seeking in EANS 2, but you'd like to put it in your EANS 1 budget, reach out to me. And if I'm not your consultant on paper, I can at least put you in touch with Bethany or Desiree, and we can work with you on that. Okay, Neil, we answered your question a minute ago, I think. If you're still having trouble, just reach out to me after the webinar. Do we need to provide a quote with pricing from our preferred vendor? I think that Kay's going to cover that here in just a minute as she transitions over to the form. Aren't you, Kay?
Yes.
Wait and answer that question as it's in front of us and we can all kind of see what the form looks like. And that's the last question right now. And we are at 108, Kay.
Okay, good. So again, this is the GMAP test site, so I'm not going to do anything this won't impact Owensboro Catholic Schools budget at all, but they've got some work to do. So good for them. They're ready, rocking and rolling and ready to go. I'm going to sign out of GMAP at this point. The next thing I wanted to talk about today was exactly how to submit a procurement form. So you have this document as well. So if you can follow along as we do this one, that would be great. The the EANS 2 procurement request form, I see actually the first mistake here is not this particular site, but you can get to the request form from this site. It's actually the EANS 2 page, but you can get to the EANS 2 page from the EANS 1 page. So I'll get this fixed up. Make a little note to yourself there that EANS 2 page is where you want to go. The top part of the form looks very familiar to what many of you did or have done in EANS 1. The requester name, give us contact information here in case somebody needs to get a hold of you. The school name, the mailing address, and the shipping address if it's different. A couple of ground rules that we talked about before is make sure that you only have one provider per request. So I'm going to move over to the actual request form now, which is an Excel spreadsheet. You recall we have 3 tabs at the bottom. Here's the first one for instructions. Second tab is providers. We have added a couple of providers that Obec could use on the KPC website, which is the Kentucky Procurement Cooperative or something like that. I'm not sure what the exact acronym stands for, but this is for procuring items through another one of our educational co-op partners that Obec will be managing. It's called KEDC, Kentucky Education Development Cooperative. They have a lot of resources, and if you click there, you can see a whole bunch of stuff available, and the AEPA website as well. We've also got a couple of new contracts onto the contract connections through the Commonwealth. In particular, I know Alan told me we had a provider added for playground equipment now. It took him almost a year to get a procurement agreement, a master agreement in place for playground equipment. So that's available now if you need to. These other folks up here are still the same folks, as far as we know, who helped with some of your procurements in EANS 1, and they are ready and willing, able to help again. The EANS 2 procurement form, make sure you use the EANS 2 form, and it should have a date on it of 3/1/22 unless we have to revise that at some point in time. Again, the name, the date, the school name, and again, one provider per request. So if you want to make an Apple purchase, use the one provider. Don't get part of your Apple from this person and part from another person. I mean, it's perfectly fine to do that. Just put it on 2 separate forms. The reason for that is we don't want to hold up an entire procurement because of one vendor. So if you had, for example, what we ran into in EANS 1, if you had 4 or 5 vendors on one form and we're waiting on some small shop who doesn't have very much inventory or whatever, we're holding up the whole procurement for one vendor, we're not able to move that for you very quickly. So we would just like to ask that you put one provider per request, and if there is a master agreement or some catalog that you're using, if you could note that, it would help us out as well.
Hey, Kay, can
Yes.
you click in shipping address, or I'm sorry, shipping city, state, zip, and see Leanne saying there's a drop down that indicates vendors instead. So that might be something we want to fix.
I got to get that fixed.
Yeah, before we use it. Thank you, Leanne.
I'll send that back out. Okay, now over to step 3, which is completing the line items for various things that you may want to procure. And again, we have a drop down here for what category. The first one I'm going to select, I've got a little example here that I'm going to continue with. I need some education technology. I want some iPads that I know about, and these might be 64 could be 128s, whatever description you want. Let's just make sure we get good ones, okay? So in my budget, and this again refers back to the budget that I was just using in GMAP. In my budget, I have 200 of these at $475 a piece, a total of $95,000. But I also want to get from my Apple vendor, I want to get some laptops. And again, we'll get some good laptops. 75 of those, I've budgeted 75 at $1,000. So these quantities are formulaed in here. Please don't make any changes, alterations to the formulas. It's very simple. But what this does show us now is, as part of your purchase, you must also consider the 6% admin fee, okay? So in tracking, we've already put a total amount in there, so now we know we have spent $10,000 of that $235,000 admin fee that we talked about. So at this point, if you'll look on step 4, we should have filled in the requester name, all of that detail at the top. We're getting education technology. We've got the prices on here. It all looks good to go. So what do you do with it? Well, I would suggest, A, save a copy of it for yourself. That's great. And then make sure that you fill out the form and email it along with any other information, whether it be quotes or a picture or whatever it is that you need to include with this request, to the KDE EANS 2 COVID Procure request mailbox, just like this, at education.ky.gov. That will come to KDE, and our budget analysts, Elise and her team, will look at your line items that must match the budget in GMAP. If this is an alignment, the request will be approved, and one of our three, Elise, Bethany, or Desiree, will, whoever it happens to be, they'll mark it. They'll put their email address in here by selecting that, have a signature, and a date that they approve it. KDE at this point will forward this request over to Obec. Obec now knows that you have this money in your budget. KDE has signed off that it aligns with your budget. Everything's good, so they're going to go to work. They're going to, if you've indicated here that this was the Apple vendor on the master agreement, that's fine. Whatever. That's who they're going to work with to procure these two items. Now, if you go to step 6, this is where Obec has gone to work, and in talking with your vendor, they can only get 100 of these. You wanted 200, but they can only get 100. They can get all the laptops, but they can only get 100 of the iPads for the $475, and they can get all of these now. We are not so fancy here at KDE that we locked this, so this is not for you to fill out. Leave this space blank. All I need the schools to take care of is what you want and with your best knowledge of what that cost is going to be. Now that Obec is actually placing the order, they will verify with you that you want to continue with this order if I can only get 100. You may say, just let's don't even get those. Let's just take that off. And they are in a position to be able to take off these 200. Now, what what Obec is not in a position to do is for you to say, okay, let's just change that 200 iPads to a completely different item. It might be the same amount of money, but they can't do that outside of KDE's approval. Does that make sense? So we got to stay within what's your approved, what has been approved for this particular request. Okay, so moving along, now notice that your 6% admin fee has changed, the total of your order has changed, but you've agreed to this, it's all good. That's what you want us to order. And in the case of these items, both of these will need inventory tags, so Obec will mark that and you'll get those tags once the delivery is made. So now Obec is ready to place the order for 100 iPads and 75 laptops. Okay, so the date of that action might be, let's say you sent that in sometimes next week, and so maybe they've got it for 3/22. They were able to get this completed. So they might say something here like order placed, and they might make a note over here that we'll make a new request the remaining, just some little note that they can attach to their document here to make sure that they understand. So this order has now been placed. Obec will copy you on the delivery order, and my suggestion, and I think we've agreed that they should send you a copy of this updated delivery form or request form so that you'll know exactly what is on the books. And once you get the order, you need to notify Obec that you've accepted delivery, because they're not going to invoice KDE for paying this bill until we know that you actually have the items in hand. So to do that, you need to make a copy of your shipping receipt label or whatever you have that proves that you've got the goods that were ordered. The company, in this case it might be Apple or it could be any one of the technology companies, will actually bill Obec for the amount of this purchase. And Obec will pay that bill and seek reimbursement from KDE. So on step 7, those steps are summarized. School notifies Obec when the goods are received, and hopefully you got what you ordered. You know, sometimes in this day and age, that's a little bit of a gamble sometimes, but if for example, think of what could happen if maybe instead of shipping you 100, at this point, we're only able to ship you 50, which is okay. You can accept those 50, but you just need to let Obec know what to pay for, because this is what will actually get recorded in your budget. And if for some reason you got fewer than what you anticipated, you know, you've got to show that that receipt to Obec, provide that receipt to Obec so that they can match it up with the invoice when they finally receive it. Okay, Elise, do we have any questions at this point on?
Yes, we have a few. I wanted to also ask you, Kay, so once they get this back from Obec with what the actual, so they've gone into GMAP and they've put in the 200, they put in the 75, they put in their 6% admin fee. Comes back from Obec, oh, hey, we can only get this many. So they'll need to go back into GMAP and update so that when Obec sends this form back to KDE for record keeping, things match, correct?
Right. We just hadn't got to that point yet.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we got some questions. Marilyn would like to know, how will you handle shipping cost and fuel surcharges that show on the vendor invoices? I'm not sure if she's meaning with the indirect cost. Kay, generally with EANS 1, you go ahead and break those out by line items so that your form mirrors the invoice or the quote. But I'll let you take that question, Kay, in case you understand it differently from me.
So at this point, and I believe Dennis from Obec is on the line as well. I did not have an indication that you need to see that broken out. That you'll have the actual the actual cost that has to be covered by the purchase, which involves any shipping and handling. I don't think there'll be tax involved, like sales tax, but shipping and handling becomes part of the item itself.
Right, but the shipping and handling would increase the cost of, for instance, those 200 iPads. So where are they going to put the shipping? And I think her question is, do we add it in for the unit price, you know, and we're at 200 at this, and that includes shipping and handling. Now for EANS 1, we had shipping and handling broke out separately.
I don't think at this point it matters. It needs to be included here as a total, as part of the cost. You can put it in with the unit price, or you can have it as a separate line item.
Okay. All righty. If we just need to put our best knowledge of the cost and Obec can adjust, do we need a formal quote like we did before? Can we just use the pricing from catalogs and such?
If an item is in a catalog, that is sufficient. If you can provide us with that catalog or screenshot or whatever you're going to provide for us with that particular item. And I guess the converse would be true if Obec can procure a particular item at a cheaper price with same delivery, same item, etc. We're not asking you to take a different item or anything like that. But if they're able to acquire something more efficiently, price-wise, without impacting, it's a different story. If I can get it $100 cheaper, but it's not going to be here for a year, but I can get it at the catalog price from this particular vendor and it'll be here next week. I mean, to me, that's a different story.
Okay, and that leads right into Lisa's question. If something like this example happens and we can find the remaining items at a different vendor, can we order through the other vendor? And Procurement has handled that pretty well for KDE. I'm sure Obec can as well. That's just what Kay's saying. As long as it's the same item, I think as long as they can switch the vendor and update the request form, as long as things don't change completely. Do we need to make sure that our bids list Obec for the billing?
And I think you're talking about when you reach out to somebody, they need to know where they will send the invoice. I think that's a true statement. So you can indicate to your the people that you're in contact with on the vendor side that Obec will need to be billed for the project. Okay.
If a vendor has a Kentucky vendor number, can we use them if they do not have a master agreement with KDE?
Yes, one of the advantages of moving to Obec is that they are not bound by statute to purchase from statewide master agreements. So as long as you have, the quote information, that the fact that whether or not they have a KY vendor number is not really a determining factor. Whether or not they can deliver, and they can provide a quote and can deliver within a reasonable estimate of the cost of the items, that would be sufficient. So Obec is not bound by master agreements or people with a KY vendor designation.
Okay.
This is especially true. Give me just a second here. This is especially true on service providers. You know, we can't, we ran into this with EANS 1 that there's not a lot of opportunity, there's not a lot of availability on the master agreement for people to install HVAC or people to install windows, which are services that we could pay for. So the state didn't have a way to procure it, but Obec is not bound by state master agreements, so they should be able to procure those services for you if you get quotes for us.
Okay. Will we get, let's see, wait a minute, I think I skipped one. Do we need to provide our school's tax exemption form to Obec?
Obec will be doing the purchasing. So I don't, Dennis, if you know something different, chime in there, but I think since you're the purchasing agent, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and I think Mark may be on the phone too, but I believe that's right, Kay.
Okay. Will we get information from Obec what vendors are available now? Kay, do you want to show them again the instructions part of your form or wherever that information was? Providers, there you go. Okay,
so like this link here for KPC, I'm not sure why it does that every time. So here's the KPC awarded contracts by category. And you can see there's just a whole slew of stuff here. Okay.
Okay. Kathy, you're asking, do you mind to resend the info for Obec so that we can update our open quotes? I think what Kay just showed you on the provider tab should get you started. And then if you need something more specific, certainly reach out to Kay or myself and we'll try to get you what you need. And Kay, that's it for questions, and we're at 1:31.
Just have a minute here to wrap this up. I'm going to sign back into GMAP test. Is it Owensboro Catholic? So the first thing, and I'll just walk through this. We'll talk more about this if we need to have another webinar. But now you're going to go into your come on.
Are you trying to show them how they would edit in their budget to update? So basically, when you get ready to do that, when you get ready to take what's on your form and make sure it matches in your budget, you have a handout David Melanti prepared for you that showed you how to revise the same exact steps with just that. Mostly we're looking at the procurements and the modify and adding a budget detail if you need to break something out from an overall writing category. And did you get it to work, Kay, or is it still giving you fits?
Still spinning up here.
Yeah. I'm
trying to sign out and maybe try it again here.
Yeah, I think if they've held on to those directions, though, that gets them started. And then the schools generally reach out with questions when they're first doing for the first time until they get used to it. So you need to keep all your handouts somewhere, basically. To Kay's point, print them off or store them somewhere and refer back to the first ones David sent out to you when we went over GMAP last month. And then the ones that Kay has sent today will be very valuable to you as well.
Well, I'm having problems getting any internet to pop up here, so I don't know what that's all about.
Your machine is tired, Kay.
I don't know about all that, but But yes, we do want you to now track the fact that you have a 6% admin fee on this transaction that will spend down that category. So make sure you get that tracked. We suggest that you add in a new line item for the specific amount of this request, which I think I've deleted at this point, but and then decrease or draw down from the existing budget account so that every time you know exactly how much you have remaining in that category to keep yourself in balance. So at this point, hopefully you have enough information to rework your budget, show the 6%, and make adjustments where you need to keep that in balance, and get that resubmitted back to KDE with give us a little bit of time to get those approved, and then you should be able to start making some procurements. Again, remember on the procurements, one vendor per form. That will just keep things a little bit cleaner and allow us to track them for you a little bit more efficiently. And we will be in communication with Obec. Obec will be in communication with you. It may take all three of us to be on a call, but our goal is to get you what you need in a timely fashion, so that you can put this to work for the kids in your school, teachers in your school, just as soon as possible. Any more questions, Elise?
Something just beeped off. Can you hear me, Kay?
I can.
All right. Are we going to receive an email when we are cleared to procure? I think that I think now, since we found that the form has some kind of a drop-down glitch in it, maybe, Kay, we could do that once the form is fixed and it's posted. We could send an email to everybody, or David or I could. Does that sound reasonable?
So I think the first thing that needs to happen, though, is they need to resend their budget.
Right.
And
yeah, you need to go in and, yeah. Sorry, Kay.
No, I was just going to say you, and then once you guys have approved their budget, then we can start procurements. I should have the new procurement form corrected here in just a bit. I'll just resend that. I'll reply all on the email you got earlier with that correction made. And then once our data manager gets back in the office, she will post it to the web for your use. But again, if there's a little bit of time lapse between the time you made your last procurement, always go to the EANS 2 website and make sure that you have the latest copy that's posted there.
Stephanie asks, do we have a new deadline for everything to be finished? Kay, I think this is a pretty important question now that Obec is on board.
Right. So this program goes through September of 2024. And so if we back up the time that's needed to make procurements and the time that's needed to, get that stuff all on board, we're not limited to like having that done, next month or next year or whatever. So we're going to be looking at this for the life of the program. Now the deadlines, I think are going to depend upon what we see is left. If you try to make a big, huge procurement on September 29th, that's not going to work. So we will probably institute a date. I don't know, could be as far back as 6 months prior to that. So it would be sometime early in 2024, but we could push it on out a little bit, maybe to the summer of 2024, once we kind of get a handle on how these procurements are going. So do you have to do something within 6 weeks or 6 months? No, but my recommendation to you is if you've got needs, let's go ahead and get those needs met, get the learning tools in place, get the technology in place, whatever it is you need to have, get that as soon as possible.
Okay, Does the admin fee on the procurement form automatically draw down the admin fee in our budget? No. Sorry, Marilyn, that's why you have to always go back to the GMAP, and you'll have to, that's what Kay was trying to show you, is how to modify that detail, insert a line, and put, you know, admin indirect cost reimbursement form or procurement request number 1 or something, and then you'll have to adjust those amounts to keep drawing down on them, similar to how we've done or asked some schools to do with their EANS 1 Excel spreadsheets. Can we procure for multiple years with scheduled drop shipment dates? I don't know. Is that, do you know the answer to that question, Kay? Can we procure for multiple years with scheduled drop shipment dates?
I'm trying to figure out what that example would be. So are you saying that we want to get, I don't know.
Well, Amazon, you can do that. You know, you can get every month, you can get paper plates delivered to you, I think is maybe what she's saying. So you get a break on how much it costs. It's like a subscription.
I will ask Obec to contemplate that. The problem I see with that is the issue that we have with advance payments for goods not, you know,
Right.
And I understand how it works for us personally, you know, that we can get those subscription services, but I don't know that we can pay for it all in advance. And then is that something that we would have to remember to pay on a monthly basis? I'm a little suspect about that particular setup, but we'll take that as a frequently asked question and get you an answer on that.
Okay, thanks. Okay. And then last question, just a general question on EANS 2. Can we include contracted services under staffing? Is this a covered cost? For example, we have a tech person that is contracted. So one thing to keep in mind is that I think the positions have to be supplemental due to COVID, but then I'll let you answer the part about contracted people, and can Obec handle that in the staffing?
I think you handled it pretty well. I'm just trying to think of this, of a situation. If you have filled out a staffing request form, then that staff is to address learning loss. If you it could be in a number of ways. You might also staff up a nurse for testing and tracking and all that kind of stuff. That's COVID related. Can you include contracted services under staffing? I don't think so. I think if you want to hire someone to service your HVAC, that has to go under a procurement. And we can put out a delivery order for, you know, someone to do the, you know, annual maintenance service on your HVAC, and that can go through procurement. We can't hire a custodian for your school. We can't hire a facility manager for your school.
I think she means maybe, Christy means a tech person. She said, I think she means like a technology position that they already have contracted. So EANS monies and staffing couldn't help with that person. He's already on staff.
Right.
But if you were wanting to add a technology and IT person for the next school year to help your teachers and students get caught up with all the changes and be, you know, socially distanced because of COVID, then I think that it would be okay to put that. It just wouldn't be contracted. You just put it on the Obec staffing request form, right? Okay.
Yes, correct.
But that would be an additional position, not one that already exists. All right, that's it for the questions. And from my end, I'm going to let Kay say goodbye to everybody, but thank you so much for being on the call and your questions. And we will be here to help you as you move through EANS 2.
I ditto what Elise just said. You should have everybody's email address. That's the best way to get in touch with folks. sometimes phone messages get lost or don't get to the right place, but if you can get us an email, and certainly I apologize for this, but if we don't get back to you as we should, don't hesitate to tug on somebody else's sleeve and we'll get it going. That being said, appreciate your all's attendance this afternoon. We will have additional webinars as we go through this process, and we definitely want to talk about ongoing budget maintenance as you begin to make your procurements and how you can keep things straight. Most of you will have no trouble at all managing that GMAP process, but the use of that tool is to help us all. We've got huge allocations in this round. I mean, we've got more money and fewer participants, so everybody has a huge allocation. We just want to help to make sure you stay within the white lines, and we just want to help you do that. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I appreciate your time and thank everyone for participating today.
Thanks, Kay. You can stop recording now.
I did.
Oh, good for you. Yay.
The
All right. I'll
record
talk to
stopped.
you.